What's up guys, my name is Ace, and one of the things mentioned in the patch notes for the Season 1 Reloaded update is they buffed tuning. In this section of the patch notes, they mention most beneficial tuning value magnitudes have been increased, whereas some harmful tuning value magnitudes have been decreased. And that's the only mention of this. There were no details whatsoever given, so we're kind of left to guess or test for ourselves. And I did want to share some post-patch results with you guys, but keep in mind, with so much complexity going on and the lack of visibility of everything here, I unfortunately don't have like a huge pre-patch database of values to be pulling from. And as a result, this isn't going to have the same sort of detail and before and after that you would normally expect with my patch note videos. So I'm more so just going to be sharing a few of these spot checks that I've done on various types of attachments with various types of tuning applied to them. And let's just dive right into it. And I want to start this off with some aim down sight tuning, because this is something that I found pre-patch. With many attachments, you could max out in the direction of aim down sights, and you would notice literally no measurable improvement whatsoever to your aim down sight speed. Whereas if you went in the opposite direction, you would see a very noticeable reduction to your aim down sight speed. So at least in many cases, the cons clearly outweighed the pros there, and it was just generally not worth tuning in the direction of aim down sight speed. So with the first test I did here, I wanted to try just a single attachment on the Vel 46. This is the Commando foregrip. And without tuning, our aim down sight speed is 250 milliseconds. Then when I tune toward the minimum aim down sight speed on that Commando foregrip, our aim down sight time is 258 milliseconds. Keep in mind, this is hand tested at 120 FPS. So it may not be to the exact millisecond, but you can definitely see a small reduction to our aim down sight speed here. Whereas if we go in the opposite direction and tune for the best aim down sight speed on this attachment, our new aim down sight time is 242 milliseconds. So already it looks like we are seeing a bit of an improvement here, and we're seeing much better balance. And this is what I would normally expect, is a balance between the pro and the con. Like in the case of this, you can either lose 8 milliseconds by going all the way in one direction, or gain 8 milliseconds by going all the way in the opposite direction. And that just makes sense to me. So that already seems like at least a minor improvement. However, that is literally just testing one attachment. I wanted to see, what about if we stack attachments? So I put these 5 attachments on the Vel 46 because all of them have the ability to impact our aim down sight speed. And with no tuning, our aim down sight time with these attachments is 375 milliseconds. Then with the minimum aim down sight tuning on every one of these attachments, that will bring our aim down sight time all the way up to 500 milliseconds, which is ridiculously slow, especially for an SMG. That's pretty crazy how slow that is. But based on what we just saw, that should mean that we should also be able to get a really good aim down sight speed if we tune in the opposite direction and max out our aim down sight speed for each of the attachments. However, unfortunately, the aim down sight speed we're seeing is 350 milliseconds. So at least definitely a noticeable improvement still compared to not tuning at all. But this isn't even remotely close to balanced like we saw with a single attachment. We can lose up to 125 milliseconds to our aim down sight speed just by tuning, whereas we can only gain 25 milliseconds to our aim down sight speed by tuning. So it looks like based on this, if you are starting to combine multiple attachments and tuning away from a particular stat on multiple attachments, the cons are still going to be outweighing the pros, at least based on this very basic test. After that, let's have a look at some recoil tuning. And with this one, I chose the MP5 with the Phase 3 grip, since the MP5 does have a little bit of side-to-side bounce, and it's nice to gain some recoil stabilization, which helps with that side-to-side bounce. And I tested this attachment with no tuning, with maximum stabilization, and then with minimum stabilization with our tuning on it. And these are the 3 recoil plots that I've got. And as you can see here, when you max out recoil stabilization, there is definitely a noticeable improvement there. The bullets aren't bouncing side to side nearly as much. It's not zigzagging as much either as it kicks upward, so that's noticeably better there. Whereas when you go in the opposite direction of the stabilization tuning, you can see there's definitely a lot more of that side-to-side bounce and a lot more inconsistency in general with these 2 recoil plots. And just by looking at this, it is kind of hard to quantify this exactly. Just by looking at this, I would say this seems fairly balanced as well. The improvement when you max out in one direction seems to at least roughly match the downside that you get if you tune in the opposite direction. So again, this is looking pretty good. Next up, I do have a little bit of pre-patch versus post-patch data for you guys, and this is with some damage range tuning, and this is on the Lockman 5.56 with the 15.9-inch wrap barrel, and we're looking at the 5-shot kill range here. And pre-patch, without tuning, this drop-off point is at 67.0 meters, whereas when we tune for maximum range on that, it would bump our range up to 69.4 meters. Post-patch, it turns out this value is a little bit better. Without tuning, we have the exact same range, so the barrel itself didn't change at all. But when we tune for that maximum range now, we can get a range value of 70 meters instead of 69.4. And of course, that is a fairly minor change, but I just wanted to show you there was in fact a change here, and it was buffed in this area. Unfortunately, I didn't have pre-patch data on the minimum range tuning for this, but at least I can show you the difference with the maximum range tuning. Now, one other value that I can control really well, and that I did have some pre-patch testing with, is aim walking movement speed. Again, this is with the VEL 46 with the Commando foregrip on it. And pre-patch, when we max out in the direction of aim walking movement speed, we go from 3.19 meters per second to 3.28 meters per second. And that is a fairly noticeable improvement pre-patch. What about post-patch though? I did this exact same testing, and unfortunately it appears this is one of the values that just wasn't touched at all, at least on this particular attachment. So it definitely seems like some things were adjusted, other things weren't touched at all. And it is pretty frustrating that we're kind of left guessing. We don't know exactly what changed with this update. And this is yet another reason that we really could use some advanced stats in the gunsmith. It's still mind-blowing to me that this game has given us so much control over each of the individual attachments, and you can fine-tune so many things with the guns, but you can't see what you're doing. You're doing it essentially blind. And then not only that, when we do finally get patch notes for the game and something changes, all we get is a very vague description, and we're kind of left to our own devices to figure this stuff out, which obviously really sucks from a player's perspective, especially if you are the type that is really into the stuff like tuning, for instance, and you want to be able to fine-tune your weapons. You can't really fine-tune if you're going in blind. But overall, based on the few spot checks that I've done with the tuning, it does seem like they have made some improvements in some areas. And it appears we're now seeing at least some more balance between the pros and the cons with some of the attachments. I can't tell you exactly which ones, but some seem to be much better now. Other ones seem to be exactly the same. And as a result, does this really change my opinion much on the tuning? Well, I would say it's at least a little bit less scary to tune because there's a smaller chance of you hurting something more than helping it. And that's one of the reasons that I typically stay away from tuning my guns, is at least pre-patch, it was pretty clear, at least with many of the attachments, that moving away from a particular stat would often be hurting that more than what you'd be gaining by moving toward a particular stat. And therefore, I basically just relegated tuning to really niche builds where I didn't care at all if I completely destroyed the stat that I'm moving away from. Having said that though, I don't know if this is really going to change how I tune much at all, simply because we still don't have any viable methods for tracking exactly what's going on with our gun when we're tuning things. If you are somebody that's really interested in tuning, I'd say at least this seems to be a bit of an improvement overall, but I'm likely still going to be staying away from it until we can see exact values and see exactly what we're doing when we're fine-tuning. Of course, that is just my thought on this whole situation after doing some basic tests here. I'd like to know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. First off, what do you guys think about the fact that it looks like they have made some improvements here and created a better balance between the pros and the cons, at least with some of the attachments? And second, does this change your thoughts on tuning overall? Are you going to start delving more into the tuning system, or not so much? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.